Exactly 22 minutes to the top of the hour. You're right in time for our first conversation. This Wednesday morning, we want to train our focus on matters of land ownership and property. Land and property is quite an emotive issue in this country, and possibly the larger part of Africa. So this morning, we want to understand what exactly are the processes and procedures when it comes to ownership of land as well as property. And my guest is already here to help us converse around that particular issue. That is Martin Gidinji, who is the sales manager, AMG Realtors Limited. Welcome to the program, Martin.
Thank you, Doreen, and thank you for having me this morning.
Good. Now let's just broach this discussion from that particular aspect in which I touched about, that land is quite emotive. One of those important things, if you're an African from whatever part of the continent, it's really quite important. But then talk to me about some of those processes that an individual needs to be understanding the minute they are thinking of perhaps land buying. And this, even as you respond, touch on particularly those that are from diaspora, because oftentimes they want to buy land back home. They want to invest in buying land back home. But there's that question of road deals. How does this go?
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for having me this morning, Doreen. And I think I would start by saying, as you've mentioned, that land is quite emotive in this country. Actually, for a long time, it's usually a conversational starter. When you go to social gatherings, when you say, I have an eighth somewhere, it's usually a conversational starter. Niko na ka eighth pahali. You know what I mean?
Uko serious na maisha?
Yes. When you go home, if you work in Nairobi, in majority of the cities, when you go back home and you tell your folks, you tell your parents, I have bought an eighth, they carry you with a lot of weight differently. You know what I mean? So land is quite emotive in this country for a long time, and it's one of the factors of production, as you know, and it helps us to be able to do many things, including having our homes. I mean, building anything, whether you want to start a business, you can only have it when you have land. So as a factor of production, that's the reason it's an emotive issue and an emotive factor. And also, it's not like it's too much, there's too much of it. You'll find that everyone wants a piece of it before it's fully sold. For example, in Nairobi, the land prices are very high. So people are actually moving out of Nairobi, because the more we progress, of course, we are going to talk about that later, the more the land prices go up. So there's this particular issue about people in the diaspora, and for a long time they have faced the brunt of road deals when it comes to land transaction, and ideally from that basis is actually where we sit as an organization. For the last 10 years we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary as AMG Realtors Limited, and for the last 10 years we've seen that majority of the diaspora customers are looking to invest here in Kenya, because majority of them usually go out there so that they can be able to actually go and get work there, and of course invest back at home, because of the limited opportunities, that is job opportunities that we have here in Kenya. So when you find those people going out there, they work extra hard to ensure that they've been able to get something here in Kenya, motherland, so that they can actually come back later. As you all know, there are some extreme weather conditions in some of those parts of the world. Right now it's winter in the US and the majority part of the Europe. So those people are bearing extreme weather conditions to be able to earn something, come back here and be able to live a comfortable life. You understand? So by that basis, you find that they end up falling prey to unscrupulous land sellers here in Kenya with briefcase companies, and we've heard about them. So what is happening, and what we are doing as an organization, is that we are enabling the diaspora customer invest here in Kenya hassle-free. There are a lot of people who are selling land in Kenya, and the reason why there are a lot of people who are selling land in Kenya is because of the ease of entry to the work of selling land. You know what I mean? There is an ease of entry. I mean, if today, Doreen, you decide that you are going to start a side hustle of selling land, you can actually do that even without registering a company. You understand? You can actually be an agent. So for AMG, it is important to mention that we only sell what we own. as a support system to the diaspora people. We don't do agency. We only sell what we own. We don't broker land. We fully buy what we are selling. We get the titles, we get the documents before we can actually start selling.
All right, I hear you. So then, just in general, broadly, talk to me about those documentations. What paperwork is needed, whether in diaspora or here in the country? Because as you've said, land is quite emotive, and those processes are really needed at the end of the day. If at all you need to be buying something legit, what is the first thing that one needs to be doing?
Number one, it's important to know whether it's an entity, a corporate entity, it's a company you are dealing with, or it's an individual. Because people who sell land in Kenya, you find that it's either a company or an individual person. You can have Martin selling land as an individual, and also you can find AMG selling land as a company. So it's very important from the onset to know, is it an entity that is a corporate organization, or is it an individual? And the very main reason why you need to know this, Doreen, and everyone who is watching us, is so that you can be able to know what or who owns the ownership document. Because if it's Martin, and it's Martin who is selling land, so does the title read Martin? Are we together? If it's AMG and it's AMG that is selling the land, does AMG has the title under their name? Because one of the biggest
So whether an individual or a company does not matter. These are the things that you need to be looking at as a Kenyan. What is the name in this particular property or land?
Good. So number one, the title deed. It is very important to know whose name is on the title.
All right.
The second thing is it's important to know the history of the land, where they bought it from. So if they bought from an individual, it is important to ask the person who is selling, and what's the history of this land. Number three, it's important to know the usability. What are the uses you can do with the land? Is it commercial? Is it residential? Is it agricultural land? Number four, it is important to conduct a search of the land that you are intending to buy. And how do you conduct a search? You get a copy of the title from the people who are selling. Once you get a copy of the title, you go to there. If it's an entity, you are going to get their PIN certificate, their certificate of incorporation. Go to a land registry and conduct a search. Once you conduct a search, you are going to get results.
Just let me butt in, please, kindly. All this, you haven't paid for this land.
Yes, not
all right,
yet.
It's important to note, because you have some who pay and then they begin doing all these processes. All right, so first of all, you have not yet paid. By the time you're knowing the land, you're doing the search, usability of the land, this is just you doing due diligence, assessing before any payment. Whether an individual again or a company, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
All right, good.
In addition to that, once you get the search of the land that you're buying, it is important to go to the site, Doreen.
Enda ujione.
Kwa sababu wanasema kwa ground vitu zinaweza kuwa different.
All right, I hear you.
So go to the land itself, see the beacons, because a land has beacons. Beacons means demarcation. That if you're buying, for example, plot number 4 at our latest project called Kikuyu Breeze, and maybe if you give me a chance, I'll tell our viewers where Kikuyu Breeze is, or Juja Prime, for example. If we take you to the site, we have demarcated the land, including access roads, because once you subdivide a piece of land, Doreen, you must give access to roads. So you must be shown where will be my road access to where my plot is, so that later the neighbor will not tell you are trespassing on their land. You've ever heard about trespass?
Yes.
Those conditions usually arise where roads access were not made.
Or sometimes, you know, this piece of land, when I was buying it, for example, it was 50 by 100 or 47 by 60. This was the size, and then you get a neighbor saying that you've entrenched a bit.
Correct.
So now that's why these beacons are necessary and important.
They are very important. And
this is class 101. You're learning.
And the beacons have numbers. So it's important to clarify whether the numbers on the ground and the ones on the map, because once you subdivide a piece of land, you get a map, you know. There is a map, a paper that has and
this is given to the buyer.
Correct.
All right.
And the map, which is a paper, is a representation of the ground, how the ground looks like. So if there is a discrepancy on the paper and the ground, you need to raise a question. For example, if you're buying a corner plot, it's number 6, and when you go to the ground, corner plot is number 7. There is a discrepancy. So you need to ask those questions. Why is it that on the paper However, it is not matching the ground. Are we together? You understand what I mean?
Understand.
So it has to match. Everything has to match from what is on the paper to what is on the ground. After that, once you've seen the land, it's important to draft a sales agreement, and it's important to establish who is paying the legal fees from the onset. Majority of the times, we advise our customers that if they have advocates and lawyers, it's important we engage a lawyer to lawyer, because as an organization we have an advocate, and if you have a lawyer, because majority of the people now have access to advocates to help them with land transactions. It's very important. So once you've seen the land and you like it, we introduce our lawyers to each other, and then there are some documents that we require from you, which is the ID, your ID, and then there is a postal address, and then there is a KRA PIN certificate and a passport size photograph.
These are the documents you need for that sales agreement?
Yes.
All right. And this also has to be signed by both parties?
Correct.
All right. Well said. All these processes, well enumerated. Due diligence has been done. So then what happens? Because these are cases that not one, not two. Currently, we have an active case. We might not get to the details of it because it's an ongoing case. In fact, the DCI were probing on that particular issue yesterday, what is happening currently in Westlands. And these are cases that have been ongoing. Someone has done due diligence, just as you explained. They finally bought that particular land, but years later, again, someone comes in and says, 3 years before now, I bought the same land. And actually, when you look at the documentation, they are the same. So what normally happens that you will get land X, whereby, as Doreen, I present the documentation, as Martin, you do, and they are both the perfect documents for the same land, double ownership. How does that occur?
Okay, thank you for that question. It is important to mention that when you're doing a land transaction, and this is something that we've seen as an organization, there are usually, because we buy land as well, so there are usually some red flags when you're buying land that people ignore. So you'll find that people are investing in land, but on the onset, you will find that you've seen something that is not corresponding with what you know in terms of land ownership and a land transaction. So once you see a red flag, because the red flags are usually everywhere, so you'll go to a piece of land, for example, and the beacons are not matching the map, for example, and then the person convinces you that, you know what, this is something that we can rectify, and then you say, okay, if you can rectify, it's okay. So there are usually a lot of, from experience, red flags when it comes to land buying that people ignore. So it is very important not to ignore any flag that you see when you're doing land transaction. For example, if you're buying a piece of land and you ask for the title of the land, and the person starts saying, you know what, give me some 30 days, I'll give you the title, or you can pay some money and then I'll give you the title in 30 days. You go ahead and pay, and yet you know very well that you need to see the title before you pay the money. Are we together? Secondly, you ask someone, what is the history of the land? And then they didn't tell you anything about it. And then they tell you, you know what, it's a long story, it's a long story, but what you need to know is that the land belongs to us. It's a red flag that people ignore. So it is very important that when you're buying land, it is very important to stick to your ground on everything that you want and everything that we've said. Don't back out if it comes to documents, if it comes to paperwork, if it comes to due diligence. Don't use shortcuts. At the same time, we've seen for a long time that a majority of the Kenyans, for example, in some of those land deals that have gone wrong, for example, you'll have an access to a lawyer, and then you say, paying for a lawyer is expensive, for example. Shortcuts. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
So some of those reasons are the ones that later cost you much more than actually the investment that you've had. So it's important to always take heed of all the red flags that you're seeing when you're doing land transaction, so that it doesn't cost you way later. It is important to follow the due process. And it doesn't matter how much hurry you are, to pay for the land. If you have seen a red flag, Doreen, it is important to back out and
just
say,
let it be.
if you don't have what I want,
yes,
then we are not going to proceed with the sale. Yes.
Well said. So then at what point do you engage the services of a lawyer? Because you really reiterated around this issue over time, even as you respond to these questions. Because also we've had instances whereby one would say, for instance, I'm buying land around this area. One would say, I'll be asking people that live around areas of KBC, for example, how things go, the land they bought. But you realize that is them. That specific land that you want to buy, it is you who wants to get this particular land. So then one would say, instead of engaging services of a lawyer, I'll just be asking around to ascertain the authenticity of what I want to get. So at what point do you engage services of a lawyer? Is it at the onset, somewhere in between as you are doing the agreement? At what point?
It can go concurrently. I would say the process of engaging a lawyer and the time you engage a lawyer can go concurrently with your due diligence, because ideally a lawyer does a lot of background work when it comes to getting the right or confirming that the documents are actually confirming the buyer is the owner. I mean, the seller is the owner. So when it comes to engaging a lawyer, you can actually go to a site visit as the lawyer is doing background work on the documents, because ideally a lawyer will be able to go to the registrar of the companies to be able to check who are the directors of this company that is selling the land, is able to go to Ardhi House or land registries across the country, conduct searches as you're going to the ground and asking the neighbors and all that.
So just do all of this in tandem?
Yes, in tandem. It can run concurrently if you are able to, because also it has some resources that are involved. So there's someone who say, I can only be able to first go to the site, I finish up that so that I can be able to engage a lawyer. It all depends on the finances that you have, because it also involves resources at the end of the day. So if you're able to engage a lawyer when you can still go to the site and do all that, that's a good thing. What, for example, we do as an organization, which is goes a long way in ensuring that you don't spend as much on your, when it comes to due diligence, and you save, because ultimately, what's the goal? The goal is for you to own land, right? So for an organization like AMG, we are able to take you to the site, and we don't charge you. So every day we do site visits to any location that we sell land. For example, Nanyuki or Naivasha or Kikuyu or Juja. We are able to take you to the site at our own cost, so that we can facilitate you going to the site and see what you actually buy.
I hear you. So then at the end of the day, just make sure you do your due diligence properly. Go to the site, see for yourself what you're being sold for. Not that if you can, make sure you engage services of a lawyer. Let a legal mind tell you how things and how the paperwork looks like and how it works at the end of the day. I also want us to talk about something quite pertinent, I should say, and this is was introduced by the former CS lands, that is Farida Karone, matters of digitization in land registry. In your own analysis, just particularly as a realtor, how does this alleviate the burden of land ownership?
Thank you very much. So the digitalization of land records in Kenya is a move that we welcome as a realtor, as AMG, and it's a good move, because number one, it will help in ensuring that matters to do with due diligence and paperwork and confirming actually that the land belongs to the person who is selling, that the process has been made easy to the buyer. You know what I mean? Because Ardhi Sasa is a platform where, as a buyer, you can be able to log in, I mean, check the history of the land. You can be able to see that it's AMG.
And you talked about history.
And history, you know, it has the history of the land. You don't have to engage any person whatsoever. You can actually be able to just put in the LR number, see the history of the land. So what does it mean? It means that it will make the work so easy moving forward for buyers to be able to invest in land hassle-free. The reason why we are talking about engaging lawyers is because of the lack or lack thereof of this system. Because all that we are saying is that these processes are manual. You have to go to a land registry, you have to get the file, you have to get a search, it has to be signed, you know what I mean? So if the SASA is able to be up and running, it is a welcome move. We welcome it with open hands, and we are looking forward for the platform to work so that our customers can actually be able to invest in land even in a more easy way, in a more transparent way, in a more faster way, because they are able to make decisions faster. Because once you click, you can click on your desk where you are, you can be able to check the history of the land and able to see the results. So you're able to make a faster decision in terms of investment.
All right, I hear you. I want us to take a very quick breather, Martin, but even as we do that, I want you to marinate on that issue of what has been put in this year's budget, 2022-2023, in this digitization, and how this one will go a long way. Also, we will navigate on the issue of wealth tax that the president talked about. As you marinate on that one, we take a very quick breather. We recoil with Martin Githinji with plenty more on matters of land and property ownership in Kenya. Welcome back. We continue our pace with the day's conversation. Still holding court with my guest, Martin Githinji, Sales Manager, AMG Realtors Limited, of course, conversing around issues of land and property ownership. Before we took that break, we were talking about digitization. And in the 2022-2023 budget, 769 million is what has been allocated to the digitization of land registries. But what I want to get from you, even as we have that money being put in this particular project, for example, is there enough awareness in terms of people understanding that sort of we are moving from the manual way of doing things to the digital way, which could be easier and, more, how should I put it? Could be easier and more believable, so to speak, in terms of owning a property?
I would say that the information is out there because majority of the times our customers are asking us about the thing about digitization of land records. So they're asking us now what happens from here. So the information is out there. What I think needs to be done is that the process needs to be expedited so that now people can be able to realize what it means. At the end of the day, yeah, the information is out there. People know about it.
So people are aware.
People are aware about it, but now I feel, or people feel maybe it's taking long for it to happen. Because, for example, Nairobi, it was supposed to have been done by June, still not yet, so that we can actually go out there to the counties, so that we can actually have all the whole country captured on the National Geospatial Data Center, which is part of the National Land Management System. So I feel the information is out there, yes. What we need to do is ensure that the process has been fast-tracked to ensure that we have actually been able to use the SASA the way we are supposed to.
All right, well said. And even when you talk about expediting the process, the former CS Land Karunei talked about 2024, for it to be cut out across
just 2
the
years
country.
From now.
You can imagine. So really, we need to fast track that process at the end of the day. But also, I want to pick your brains on what the president talked about. That was in 20th of September when he was addressing Parliament. He talked about taxing wealth, or the wealth tax, for example. This is still a proposal, but at the moment it is actually entrenched in law, then it would mean that actually taxes on wealth would be something that Kenyans would have to make do with. And this on the aspect of businesses, investment, as well as properties. Of course, we live in Kenya, and definitely you know that we, as Kenyans, we keep saying that I will buy land, then I'll get what to do to Kisonga, I'll know. But the moment this actually becomes law, whether this land or whether this property is earning you rent or income, then you'll have to pay for it. As a realtor, and just again to pass information to Kenya, what does this mean? And again, as I said, it's not yet law, but the moment it becomes, this might just be the way we might be moving. What would this mean for the real estate business, for example?
It would mean that for a long time, people have just been buying land for investment speculation. And this move is a good move because once
so it's a good idea from the president.
It's a good idea because however you look at it, and I choose to be positive about it. I choose to be positive about it, Doreen, because for a long time you will find that the people who invest in land, for example, from AMG, they will keep asking me all the time, Martin, has anyone built there? Every single time.
Someone bought land 3 years ago.
Has anyone done anything there?
Is there a road passing over there?
So once this becomes a law, wrong, I feel a majority of the people will not let their land stay idle. If land is developed, majority of the lands that we have will be developed in this country. It would mean one thing, that ideally the property appreciation will go up. You know what I mean? So, and that's the reason I'm choosing the positive side. Because it means that if land has been developed, majority of the land has been developed, it means that, of course, land appreciation will go high, will go up, which means that even as the law or as the matter is being pushed in Parliament to become a law, it's a positive thing, because it will mean that there will be infrastructure development, there will be actually people developing their plots into houses, into commercial centers, and it all means that the land in the adjacent area or in that area will go up. Number one. Number two, it will have a spiral effect in terms of creation of jobs when it comes to building and construction. So it means that more jobs will be created if more people will actually build on their in their plots. You know what I mean? So that actually will have an effect in the economy in terms of people actually getting jobs in the buildings and the houses that will be constructed. So I choose to look at it on a positive side.
On a positive note.
Yes.
And of course, the president said that this is in a move to try and increase taxes. So trying to look at areas here and there where we can increase taxes to avoid on external borrowing at the end of the day, as he mentioned. But as you said, you're looking at it from a positive angle, in positive direction. Also, I wouldn't want us to exit this space without talking about issue of land grabbing. It is a matter that also the previous ministry really tried a lot to deal with. In fact, there was a time where the former CS was in the Senate committee just trying to address these issues of land grabbing, talking about how it has been an ailment in our country for the past 60 years or even beyond that. In the UK, for example, they have dealt with this issue for close to 15 years, and this is a developed economy. Up until now in Kenya, it is still an emotive issue, land grabbing. What can we do to just deal with this? Perhaps not even today or in the next 10 years, for example, but slowly by slowly. What can we do to sort of like deal with issues of land grabbing in Kenya?
I look at the issue of land grabbing in a two-way traffic. Number one, there is what you can do as the owner of the land, and also about the systems which represents the government agencies. So I would start with the government agencies, because majority of the times where we have land grabbing in Kenya, it is where land grabbers work in cahoot with government agencies for protection. You know what I mean? Because that can't happen if there is no protection from government agencies. So
it means you just can't wake up and decide I'm taking your land as Martin.
So I feel if we are able to align some of these government agencies so that we can be able to have people with integrity in some of those government agencies, this will be a thing of the past. But if the people who are still in those government agencies are corrupt, for example, you'll find that they will always work in cahoot, because it's always someone who is going for protection, for example, and telling those agencies, I need your protection as I grab a certain piece of land. You know what I mean? And the government agencies, we all know them, that touch on matters to do with land, from the security agencies to the land sector, all those agencies. If we are able to have agencies that are straight and that are integral when it comes to integrity, then this will be a thing of the past. The second thing that is about you as an individual, because if you are able to actually check out the pieces of land that you've bought in the long run, I mean, you commit yourself every month, you'll be going back to that plot you bought in Nanyuki and just checking it out. Do actually people go back and see and check out what they bought? Because some of these land grabbers, they survey on a piece of land that is not checked or not
but honestly,
for a long time. So
just let me jump in on that one. I mean, okay, I hear you. Going back to that piece of land that you bought, assuming I bought a land in Kakamega and I'm living in Nairobi, how often can I really be going there? But also, if I have all the documentations and a title, why would really I be needing to be going there and checking the land?
Ideally,
as an individual, for example.
Ideally, it's actually not about just checking. It's about doing something on the land. For example, you can actually fence it. We encourage our customers, for example, to fence. It doesn't have to be a perimeter wall. It can be just a simple fence. Because one of the things that the land grabbers take advantage of is the emptiness of the land. You know what I mean? So if you have a structure on the land, land, for example, in Kakamega, you have a fence, and someone is being shown your land.
When you're not there.
The number one question is, when did you fence this land? You know what I mean? And if they try to gain entry, you know, if you fence the land, very few people can actually dare to get into that land. Very few, if you are not the owner. So we usually encourage our customers not just going back to see the land, because seeing is saying. It is important to just do something, to put a small fence on the land, because what we are doing is that you are pushing away would-be land grabbers if you're actually doing something on the land. Just something, fencing the land, putting a structure. Kuna mtu hata anaendaga anamwaga mawe tu. Anaiacha tu hapo. Yes. You are actually putting away would-be land grabbers when you do that.
All right, well said. Thank you so much. And directors just say that we need to finish at this point, but I understand that when it comes to land, it's really quite one of those lengthy conversations because there's quite a lot to talk about. Nonetheless, we have to cap it at this point, and I just want to appreciate you for coming and talking to us about what we need to know, the processes we need to be employing as individuals, as Kenyans, if at all you're intending to own land or property. Asante sana.
Thank you for having me this morning, Doreen. I also want to thank our customers for the last 10 years that we've been in business, for choosing to invest with us. Welcome to AMG Welters, and of course, right now we have an amazing promotion.
No, we have to cop. We have to cap at that point. Martin, thank you so much again for your time. I've been speaking to Martin Githinji, who is the sales manager at AMG Realtors Limited. Of course, land and property ownership has taken center stage of our conversation. Good place to end this particular conversation, but Good Morning Kenya continues after this breather. Stay with us.